Welcome back to Garden Studio. I'm Tessa Pinner, a designer and gardener in upstate South Carolina, Zone 8A. We have reached September. Now, we Southerners know September is not fall. September is still summer, but it is time to start thinking and planning, and that is exactly what I'm doing this week. Planning for updates and developments in the cottage garden for fall. So the most dynamic changes that happen this time of year actually happen in my kitchen garden. I have one bed in particular that everything in it was just done. Yellowing, turning brown, dying, and I am going to rip it all out this week and direct sow a bunch of greens, probably maybe some herbs in that bed. My other beds are still producing. I'm still getting tomatoes and I'm still getting peppers, so I'm not quite ready to rip those out yet, but I am going to be thinking ahead for what will go in those when it's time to take them out in a few weeks. In the end, I decided to remove everything from this bed except for the cascading rosemary. I have had some success with that overwintering, but it's also a little more sensitive to cold because it's raised out of the ground. This one's gotten a good head on it, so I'm hoping it lasts the winter and goes through with my other greens. The biggest task here is really getting all the climbing vines off of the wire fence. About 90% of what you see here, maybe even more than that, is actually cucamelon vine. One cucamelon vine that went absolutely crazy. I did decide to take out the sage plant as well. That started as a little 4-inch pot from a garden center 2 years ago, and it has grown into quite a happy monster. But it takes up so much room in the bed, and I do have another sage plant in a pot that I can come out and just cut if I need sage for a dish in the kitchen, that I decided this one is just going to become ornamental. So I dug it up, and I will show you here in just a little bit where I planted it out in the garden. I find that after every seasonal switch, I have to top up the soil in the beds a little bit. I don't generally like to just go buy soil. I did go and buy a bag of worm castings, and I'll do worm castings in all the beds. This is not so much to bring up the soil volume as it is to just replace nutrients, help with organic matter and fertility. What really does bring up soil volume is a wheelbarrow full of our leaf compost from 2 years ago. 2 full years is about what it takes for leaves to break down to the point where it's a little more than just a mulch. It's actually becoming kind of a fine dirt-like powder. 1 year will get you something that you can use as a mulch. So basically over top of the soil to keep weeds down. 2 years will get you a nice fine organic amendment to add fertility back to the soil. I took the sage plant and put it in a blank spot at the entrance to my cutting garden. This had been very much ripped apart by chickens the last year, and really all that had recolonized wasn't the chrysanthemums and good things that were here before, but weeds. So I weeded this spot, and it's going to be the perfect place for this sage to thrive. Of course, it's important to water it in. I watered some of the blank dirt next to it to get it ready to sow some seeds. And in my hands here, I'm showing you some seed I just gathered off snapdragon plants that I pulled out of the kitchen garden bed. You'll see all these tiny black seeds come falling out, and you can just go ahead and scatter those or put them in a bag to save them. And here I went ahead and did both. I am planning to get any plant starts, so small seedlings, from a local farm. Anything that's direct sown, I buy seeds and sow myself. So this week is for seed inventory. I'll get out my containers and go through my inventory. What do I have? What do I need? And I'll order whatever I don't have for the kitchen garden. The same actually goes for the cutting garden and any flowers I might want to grow that are best grown started in the fall. So the whole category of hardy annuals, that's essentially an annual that goes for 1 year, but it can take colder temperatures. It can take a little bit of frost. So oftentimes the seed catalogs or growers, many times in the Northeast or the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, they will put sow very early spring or seed very early spring on these kind of flowers. This is everything from snapdragons, bachelor's buttons, corn cockles, bells of Ireland, poppies, things that in other climates can be sown early spring, but for us, if we don't do it in the fall, there really isn't a season for it because our spring is so short. We almost have to split our spring, a little bit in the fall, some dormancy in the winter, and then a wake up with a head start in spring. And we can have some of those beautiful flowers if we start them now. I have here 2 stacks of seeds. This one is the seeds that I pulled from my seed stash. So these are ones that I know I want to use up first, but I went through them and wanted to fill gaps. And so I actually went to a local garden center and got a bunch more this morning. So in the already had category, there's some root vegetables. I haven't had amazing success with root vegetables in my raised beds, but a gardener is an eternally hopeful creature. So I think I'm gonna try again. I'm gonna keep trying. So I have these root vegetables here. I'll just push them out of the view. I have a little bit more kale, some parsley, cilantro. I may or may not start Brussels sprouts. I actually think I'm going to buy those from a local farm sale. So I've got almost no greens left, and this is a staple of my fall, winter, and early spring garden. So I have found in the past, all right, I'll move those off to the side, that kale is the hardiest for heat. So I always sow several varieties of kale. Red Russian does very well. This seems pretty close to the Lacinido or dinosaur kale. I haven't done this dazzling blue. I have done the curly one. They do so well and go for a long time, even when it starts to get warm. Little Gem, this is probably my favorite lettuce. It's kind of buttery butter lettuce. It's just so nice. Of course, spinach. I've never grown endive. I'm excited to try it. And watercress. These are my 2 sort of fancy greens. So I'm excited to try those. Radishes, of course, I sow these in the spring. I sow them in the fall. I just love to have a couple of rounds of radishes a year because they're so satisfying to pull up. And I said I don't have great success with root vegetables, but I do have good success with radishes. Okay, let's see. More greens. Oh, all right. Baby greens and arugula. I love arugula. I could eat arugula every day. So I have a big packet of that and a big packet of these mixed baby greens. And the color variation is so nice to have out in the garden. Now we move to the flowers. May order a few more online. This is what I could get locally. I showed you that I collected snapdragon seeds, but those are all a variety called apple blossom. And these are some other colors that I would love to try. I'm gonna throw some of them out and some of them I might actually do in trays. Poppy, well, I'll just be honest. I've never had success with poppies, but I've also never done the thing that I needed to do and start them in the fall. So I have Icelandic poppy, which seems like a little more of a stretch, but might try it. And corn poppy I know will work here if I sow it now. So I'm excited about those. The bells of Ireland I know will work if I do it now. Bachelor's button, I've had great success starting in fall. It will self-sow sometimes and come up, and that is the best way to have it over winter, and then it's ready to go in spring. Same with scabiosa. And then of course, viola. I love a blue viola, and it looks like this is a mix, so we'll see what we get. So that's here. I love a view of seed packets. How pretty is that? I mean, it's just gorgeous. It's like catnip for a hopeful gardener. At the beginning of every season, you can go back to the dream. There actually isn't a lot to do in the cutting garden right now, which is so nice. I get to go out there and really just take a walk through and enjoy it and do what I intended and cut from it for the house, for the table. I love this time of year in the cutting garden because maybe it's not the most floriferous, but there's the least amount of work to be done for now. The work really starts out there again when frost knocks everything back, and I might do an initial partial cleanup. But for now, things are blooming. New weeds aren't germinating at this time of year with any rapidity. I just get to go out there and enjoy it. However, one thing that is on my mind for the cutting garden is seed saving. There are a few things that I like to save seed from. I've already done something like foxglove because those produce seed heads so early in the year, but snapdragons, Queen Anne's lace, echinacea, I like to go around and gather those and either scatter them right away, save them for next year, give them to friends. Anything that's producing a seed head now. Its natural life cycle is to drop those seeds into the ground now. So really the ideal seasonal rhythm, if you're pulling seeds off and you know where you might like them and you're okay with leaving some things to chance, is to just go ahead and scatter those now and see what happens and then save some as an insurance policy. These are the seed heads of Bright Lights Cosmos, and you can see these long spindly pieces, dry and brown. Those are individual seeds, and it is so easy to gather them. They're just begging to basically be grabbed and put in a little bag. So these I will save for sowing next year and have myself a good stash so I don't have to buy these again. This is the Bright Lights Cosmo flower. It's just so cheerful, floats above other plants. Great little spot of color in the garden. I hope this time of year is bringing some relief from heat for you, a breath of literal fresh air, as it were, and a renewed motivation to get back out into the garden. That's what September and October do for me. Just when I feel like I never want to go outside again and I'm on house arrest with 95-degree days, there comes a week where the heat breaks and you see the light at the end of the tunnel. So summer is such a wonderful time, and I'm always glad for it to come to an end. I hope you have a wonderful week in your own gardens. Happy gardening.